Apparently my son had a bowl of cereal in his room, and she was deciding she was part of the 101st Stealth Division and was trying to sneakily get by me and go into his room so she could raid his supplies. And so that look of guilt gives her away every time. Okay, back to the action here. Okay, so this is the first one. We got the blue or teal or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so I'm seeing that this guy is hit and disrupted. So that would be him. So he's across the river, he's hit, and, oh, where's my disrupted? And then disrupted. Okay, and then the next one, oh, actually, he's not just across the river, he's up. He's up here because he's across to the guy in the forest. So you can see forest. And then the 116P made it over. It looks like it's the 16th. Okay, so he made it across. Neither of these are even there. This one is damaged, and here. And then we have a 3 and a 3 also there. And then this 4 is there. So I think that adequately covers. So they did take one hit. Looks like we took a hit and retreated twice. All right, so that's their setup, and that was card B. So now we have card C. And so since the last one was B, it's saying that the 116 goes to 1309. That's this guy. So he goes to here, 1309. And then the 156 116P goes to 1407. And 1407 is there. And then the 60th 116P goes to 1508. So that, I guess, simulates they crossed the river. And so he was able to, with 5 movement points, move from here, which this would have been 3, that would have been 5, and he miraculously made it all the way to there. Yep, I sense a cheater already. There's no way he was going to make it all the way there. But that's what happens when he's the second card and B was the first card. It doesn't say anything happens to the allied unit, so I'm assuming he just moved so he could surround him, and that was it. Okay, now we have our first one where we're going to have 3 cards played, and of course it's the purple division, and you may recall that we really love that one. And by the way, the instructions are no different. For the C, it's just saying that the C is going to be based on whatever the 3 is. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is this picture here. So let's figure out how that's going to look. You can see that our unit is all the way back. Here it's damaged and it has a disrupted marker. So this one retreated twice. He's damaged. And we put a disruption marker on him. Okay, and then you're going to see we have 2 units here, a 4 and a 4, and I got to closely look at these. This one's clearly one of them, and the other one's going to be one of these, because hopefully they're not going to cheat too badly. Looks like it's the 3rd. Yep, right there. There's a 3rd. So he crossed. Okay, so then behind him, here is a 2 and a 4. So one of these took a damage. It's this one. So that was an elite one. And then this one's still there. And then there's a 3, 4-4 here. Okay, still 3-4-4. And then there's a 3-3 here. And there is a destroyed bridge. And I sort of like what they did with their marker. They put the destroyed bridge here, and it's just facing the hex side. That's actually a really cool idea. Why didn't I think of that? So they put it here instead of where the units actually go, and it's just facing exactly the hex side where the bridge is. That's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Oh, Jeff, you just learn something new every day. But yeah, okay, so that's the first step. And that was, by the way, card number, or letter B. So now we're doing C. So we have to do the 2B action. So 2.2 Panzer to 1708. All right, 1708 is here. So the 22P Panzer goes there. Okay, then the next one is 3.2 Panzer to 1610. Where's 1610? That's all the way blazes down here, so it's going to be one of these guys. Here we go. That's the 1610. So let's just check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That movement I can see. The other one, oh, you know what? This guy is a bracket. That's why he can pull it off. He can just go 2, 3, bing, bing. Ah. Okay. 304.2P to 1807. 1807 is this guy. So 3.304. Okay, that's this guy. So they basically charged the river as much as they could. And then Germans are going to control 1709, which I'm assuming... Oh, I see. I see. He's saying that he took that town. So that they took that town. So he moved forward and then just walked right around them because he's bracketed. So that's what he gets to do when they're bracketed. Okay, that makes sense. And taking the town does block supply from going along that road. So that is important. And then we have yet a third card. So now the 3 doesn't care what the letters were. They're repairing the bridge. So this bridge is repaired. And it probably would behoove us to make it yellow to show that the Germans control it. Green is going to always represent us. Okay, so they definitely have supply on that one. And I'm going to go on a limb and say they got that one too. Okay, next one are the pink corps. And here we go. So we got a destroyed bridge here. And you can see there's a 3-3 and then the 15 is damaged. 3-3 and then the 15th is damaged. Okay, the American unit is untouched. This one didn't move, and this guy didn't move. And I'm gonna do this here. I actually like that. Even though their picture doesn't quite show it that way. Okay, so we just have to remember that we were the B card. So now the next one comes out. It looks like this is only a 2-carder. 352 to 2006. That's this guy. And then it says the 11th Battalion to 2006. Oh, that's these guys. And then it says 13.5F to 1807. That's this guy to 1807. Oh, that's way up here. Hold on. Yeah, I'm checking the squigglies. They can move up like that. And then it says the 109th 28th Division is reduced. So that's these guys. So they are reduced, and that's it. Okay, moving on. Our last two. This one has a setup. If they would have conquered this tank, I would have been pissed, because nothing ever conquers that tank. And if this unit was Mr. Slush Fund down here and he fell all the time, I would be upset as well. Let me see if I can move you guys. These two units are the most stout units in the history of gaming right here. This one and this one. I don't think I've ever done a damage to either one of them. And if this card ends up damaging them, I'm going to call foul. Okay, so it's showing that this guy somehow moved here. And then this one moved there. So they're doing a switcheroo, which I always like to do. This one stays and that one stays. So nothing really changed other than they switcherooed. Okay, so that's B. And then we have this one. The 276 goes to 2304. So he's crossing the river. The 320.212 goes to 2402. So he's going to where this broken bridge is. And then the 423.212 is reduced. So this guy takes a hit. And then the US is reduced. I'm calling shenanigans. But they were actually able to reduce this guy. So somehow or another, this guy 2 spaces away got reduced. But that's the situation. Okay, so that is set up, by the way. So now this organizer, you can toss out of the game, if I can ever toss it correctly. And then this one, we're gonna flip over, and it's gonna be our allied deck. And I need to see, the problem is when I sat in the middle of the table, I had room on the right and I had room on the left for doing stuff like this. I have nothing on my left that I can do. So I'm going to put this on my shelf here. So I pulled out my shelf in the middle here. And so we're gonna just put him on there, and we'll do our cards here. Okay, so now let's see if this solo setup is going to help us. Sort the command cards by side, German and Allied. Separate the 16th, blah, blah, blah. Done. Separate into 2 piles, primary and all others. Pull out the German Army and Army Group initial cards. That is true. So the German Army and Army Group cards, they go out. Two, three, 4. That's 4 cards. They all go out. Okay. After sorting, place the cards as follows. Shuffle the 14 supplemental cards. Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14. I'm cooking with butter. And place the 7 German initial primary cards and the 4 German Army and Army Group cards in the discard box. So the 7 initial primary cards are all going in the discard box. So that emulates that they took their first impulse there. And they basically activated all their primaries. And then they activated, I guess, all of their army cards. That's fine. Those are all in the discard. Places 4. Okay. Number 3. Place aside the 12 German reinforcement cards for later use. What the heck does that mean? Oh, those are just the ones that are for future days. See, it goes through the trouble of explaining that, but then doesn't explain. We're on number 4. Place the 3 Allied initial primary cards face down in the draw pile box on the Allied card display. Okay, so of the cards I have for the Allies, you can see here, these are all supplemental, and there's only 3 primaries because I only have 3 cores on the map. So these are, of course, going to go into my draw pile. So that's what it's trying to set up here. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. These are the supplemental cards all shuffled. Those are all the primary cards and the army cards. They're already out because that's what we just did with that German setup. Is they just did a massive attack, and that emulates the fact that they've already spent their cards for December 16th. Okay, so we're on 5. So I got these supplemental cards. And I'm just going to shuffle, put them in the available supplemental card box. Okay, so here's how it's going to look. I already know my primary cards are going to be in my hands, so they're in the draw pile, and then these are there, and this is just like the German game. We're going to just draw as many of the supplementals as it allows. So drawing 4 random. And in case you're wondering, it's just like last time. The rule book on the last page shows you that the fixed artillery range is 3, Allied supplemental cards is 4, and our hand size is 4. Okay, and then the German surprise attacks are completed. That's why the 11 cards start in the discard pile, and then there's a slow Allied reaction. We'll get into those rules in a second. So I just come over to here, and we're going to grab 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll shuffle those and make a thumb war. And all right, and so that's our deck. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to go in our hand, and we only have 3 in the draw pile. Okay, so that's that. Draw 4 random cards, place them, shuffle the Allied draw, place the 22 in the entering play box. Okay, so what it's trying to tell you is that these cards I have way up there should be here, but when they're here, they cover this up, so I don't like that, so I leave them over there. I like looking at this chart. Now, mind you, if you sort these cards properly, you can see by the 18 on there that you don't need the chart. You can see that whenever the 18th comes, all the 18th cards are going to come. But as you can also see, is I didn't have them sorted. So I'm going to do that right now. There's not that many. It's a whole bunch on the 22nd. Okay, so you have the 27th, 26th, 23rd. And then you have a whole bunch from the 22nd. That's the British, by the way. Then you have 17th. Nope. Then you have the 20th, and then the 18th, and then the 17th. So we're going to get more cards soon enough. All right, so technically speaking, yes, I could put them like so, because now that they're sorted, I can just see by the number that they're coming into my pile. Those rules, by the way, are 100% identical to the German game. Okay. Place the 5 allied units with a date of 16 in the reserve unit box. That is done. You can see there's a stack of 2, and another stack of 1. Place each unit with a 2-digit date in the space on the calendar. Done. Place aside the R's. Done. OKW's done. VDH done. Place 1 yes in Bullingen. That's this one that I was telling you about. It has to go there. And then the other 2 yeses in your choice and the other 4 hexes marked Fuel Depot. Okay, so as you know, I like to put stuff down and then we can read it with the camera. So I'm going to put them as far up north as I can, because then I don't have to worry about bumping them with my papers. So that's very strategic. It also, I think, means that I have to defend the north, right? So let's see how that plays out. Okay, place the day marker on the 16th, done. Make sure they're at 0 victory points. Well, let me go grab the victory point markers. They're still on my other game. So, done. They are at 0 points. Finally, place 1 of the 60 combat chits, 1 set, in a mug. All towns east of the west wall hexes are German-owned. All towns west are Allied. 4 blown bridges and 5 intact bridges behind the German line are German. All other bridges are Allied. Okay, so we had 4 blown bridges, but 1 got repaired. So that's fine. And then it's saying that there's 5 bridges behind Allied German lines. I think it's because there's actually 1 here. That's always hard to see. There's 2 more here that we never use. So that's 3. There's 1 way back here for 4. And I'm sure there's a 5th one around here somewhere, and I'm just not noticing it. So those are all German bridges. Oh, there it is. The 5th one. I said the 4th one was here. The 5th one is right there. So those are all German bridges, and that makes sense. They're all behind the west wall hex. And then what I did was I just marked 2 bridges to be German. This one actually was always German, because all the blown up bridges are considered to be German control. So that's an interesting thing. I may have gotten that wrong in the German solo game, actually. But this one, for sure, switched hands because he crossed the bridge. And he owns both sides of the hex. So that is the setup, folks. Now, when we play, we're going to go first. That's not the case every other day, but because we played all those setup cards, that simulates them going first. And then we're going to get to do an action before they do in the official part of the game. The 16th rules, as you can see, the German surprise attack completed. They're basically done. Just another refresher is that these little black arrows are for the Germans, and the fat triangle shows the direction they want to go if they're advancing, and then the skinny triangle is like a secondary direction if they can't go the primary. If you'll notice, there's none of those yellow circles, right? Because those were Allies circles for places they wanted to defend. None of those exist because that's our job, is to defend, and we get to decide whatever we want. You still see some little numbers here because those are hold value numbers, meaning that if a unit were in that spot, this 3 is going to add to its desire to not retreat, okay, because it's got a nice defense line there. And you can see there's a little 7 here in the middle of this town, Bastogne, of course, being a really nice town. Heard it's great in July. And anyways, the rest of the rules for us is we just have a slow Allied reaction. All impulses of December 16th, our non-mechanized units may only move 1 hex. So all of our infantry can only move 1 hex during activation, unless we play the raise alarm command, and the reinforced battle also allows them to violate that rule. We may not blow any bridges, and I believe the only way we can blow bridges is by playing engineer cards. I don't think it's automatic like it was for us when we were playing against the Allies. However, as you saw, we rolled a die and it was actually pretty low odds. So the blowing bridges thing doesn't happen all the time. And we're not allowed to play any artillery combat tactics, but we're allowed to play the core artillery. There is a card out there that has it. I just don't know which one. We skip the first 3 phases and we start on phase 4, the first German impulse. Start the day with the first Allied impulse of the command phase. So even though we start on phase 4, we actually skip the first German impulse as well. And that's what it's saying. Skip the first 3 phases and phase 4, the first German impulse. It's skipping all of that. And then we're going to start on the Allied impulse. Okay? So if you're following this, you can pretty much just jump all the way. It's like this is the German attack sequence. And right there is the Allied impulse. So we should be able to just start here and go. You're going to find that this is not very different than the German solo game. We get to play 1 card to initiate 1 command of our choice or pass. And you have to pass if you have no cards, because remember, the Germans are dictating when the day ends, not you. Okay? After completing a command or passing, the Allied impulse is over. So it's 1 command and that's it. We're done. Draw cards from your draw pile to bring you back up to your hand size for that day. If there are cards in the GE draw pile, the German draw pile, conduct a new German impulse. Fair enough. Else, go to the end of the day phase. Also fair enough. Some events occur only on the days listed. This is nothing new. The Army and Army Group cards allow you to play any command event. Reactions and special events are not command events. Thank you, Sebastius. There it is. I remember. Engineers and Manteuffel directs traffic. In effect, you may not place a roadblock within 1 to 4 hexes of a unit in the 5th Panzer Army. So that's just something to remember. We don't assign replacements until turn 20. We can deploy reserves. You have to be within the core area. On the left side of the map are the core areas, just like last game. So that means the squiggly lines matter. They protest in the streets and have clogged many highways for Squiggly Lives Matter. It's a very big deal here in America. Okay, or in Belgium in particular. Okay, so it might be tied to the France yellow vest thing that's going on these days. In a friendly supply head, so if we're going to deploy, you have to deploy to a friendly supply head. Remember, a supply head is just any road that can trace to a friendly map edge. And in this case, we got all kinds of friendly map edges that helps us. So the Germans are the ones that have the harder time. We're not allowed to be in or adjacent to a detachment. Okay, detachments are new. These are German tokens. So we were using these to denote like where is a possible place that the Allies would deploy a reserve. But if you switch it over there, that's a detachment. So I think those are like the equivalent of the Omaha Beach garrisons that the Germans can place these to basically keep control of towns and whatnot, and maybe have some zone of control. I didn't read it all, so I'm sort of guessing, but that's what these are for. And they obviously influence our ability to deploy. We're not allowed to be next to them. Also, we have to grab all of our objective markers. So these objective markers are really interesting. These objective markers are, they're going to go on the map when the particular army or corps is actually activated. Okay, so these don't go on the map until then, but like for example, this core here, I think is always going to go to 0506. So there's like certain ones that they always have. But anyways, I'm digressing. We don't do that until the Germans actually activate, but just have those handy because you're going to need them. And we'll get into all the rules for how to deploy those then. We have to be 3 hexes away from a German unit or town. That's exactly the same as the German game. We're allowed to be 2 hexes away if it's a map hedge. And watch me forget this rule 30 times, but that's in there. And then it has to be 0 to 3 hexes of a unit in the same division first, corps second, army third. Okay, that's the tiebreaker. Now, you do have this alternate that I was telling you about, where you can, whoa, I almost knocked over the camera. You can put a unit with a S or a printed entry date earlier than the current date. You can use the standard method, or you can deploy in a friendly supply head within the core area 5 hexes away from any non-isolated German unit. Reserve units in the same division entering in the same impulse have to be together. The U.S. airborne divisions consist of 4 units. So to avoid overstacking, those units are deployed in adjacent hexes. They both must be valid. So that's another special rule for us. And we can go into these, I guess, more when we actually do a deployment. And I'm not going to get into the British Corps. Those aren't even going to happen for quite a few days. So when we do activation, we can activate all units in a formation. Really, I'm going to just stop and just tell you, this is identical to the German game. So nothing here should be shocking. Here's the bridge ownership. Here's our movement rules. And then we have supply status for the TEC, etc. So we can build improved positions, of course, and those rules are identical to what it was already. And of course, we can remove dispersed markers, which we actually have 2 units that are dispersed right now. So let's see what we got card-wise, and then let's figure out our actions from there. So I'm going to zoom you out. And the first thing we got is the 8th Corps. Okay, so the top one says deploy all corps reserves, which is going to be 2 armor for us. So that's not a bad thing to do. In fact, I likey. Okay, we do have a no command, which is great to just play as an engineer combat. Or we can do an engineer event. So let's take the time and see what that does. So the Allied tactics, the engineer lets us place 2 roadblock markers, each one in a non-clear, meaning that it can't be a clear terrain, road hex, in Allied supply, not adjacent to a German unit. And then we have to see 10.8 for its effects. It's actually really good to look up what those effects are, because I honestly don't remember if it was the same as the German game or different. Because obviously in the German game, that was a big deal, those roadblocks. Yeah, the player aid doesn't have roadblocks spelled out, so it says 10.8. So let's look it up real quick, because maybe we want to put some roadblocks out. Here we go. A German unit may not enter a hex with a roadblock at any time, must stop moving or advancing upon entering a hex that's adjacent and has a direct road. So that's identical to us. It doesn't need to stop. Yep, identical to us. Roadblock blockers, no zone of control. Does not negate their zone of control. Remains on the map until removed. It's either an Allied unit enters its hex. At the start of a German unit activation, the roadblock is adjacent to an active German unit. During the supply phase, the roadblock is unable to trace Allied supply. Those are the 3 ways it can be removed. If you get Manteuffel directs traffic, you may not place a road marker within 4 hexes of a 5th Panzer Army. And that's it. So in our game, the German game, roadblock markers were a way to get reserve units to come out. I think in this game, roadblock markers are really just a deterrent. I don't think we get to bring out reserve markers. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so we have both of these, and then we have the 18th Airborne, and we do have an expedite command here. Oh no, that's a German game. We can only do the A's, remember? So we don't do the G's. That's going to be the hardest thing. So we can do raise the alarm with this guy. That's another thing we got to look up. Raise the alarm is available. Here, we have an engineer event we can play. Or as you can see, we can deploy. There are no reserves available for this guy. And then this is a particular division. So we can do a combat screen with him, or activate one or the other division. I like how whenever the AI goes, they get to activate both. All right, so that's our 4 cards. So let's look up raise the alarm and then figure out what we want to do. So I'm going to grab my player aid here. Move any one unit its full movement allowance using strategic movement if eligible, or deploy 1 unit from the reserve unit box. Deploy the unit normally or as a strategic reserve, even if not so designated. That's not the worst thing in the world, but I can deploy 2 units if I just play the deploy command. I guess I can deploy a unit that's not a part of their core. All right, let's look at the map and figure out what we want to do here. Okay, so obviously the Germans are doing what we did. They're busting through the middle, and we got 2 units that are in desperate need of removing dispersal tokens. And those 2 units are part of this core. So I'm tempted to activate this core. And you can see here we can activate all units in the core. We could deploy units in the core, and that would allow me to deploy some armor near these units. They are 9th armor, and the other 9th armor unit is down here, so they would have to deploy maybe 3 spaces away. So I might have some restrictions there on where those armors can go. But I can't do both. If I deploy the 2 armor units, I cannot remove the dispersal marker. So that's the key thing with this one. I want to play this card twice, basically, is what I'm trying to say, and I can't. Playing roadblocks is interesting because you can see St. Vith is completely unprotected. So let's go back and look at our reserves again. Maybe raising the alarm would pay off because then we can do a strategic reserve deployment. So it has to be 3 hexes away from a German, and it doesn't have to be proximate. So that's the one thing that's different. Remember, the Allies always had to be we had to be proximate in the deployment method A. It has to be 0 to 3 hexes of a unit in the same division. So right now, the 2 reserves that we'd be pulling out are in this division, the 9A, 9th armor. So it would have to be within 3 hexes of that. So obviously a nice is to take that victory point and hold that. But then from there, I can only go 1, 2, 3, and then put him basically in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't really help me to get him anywhere else. It has to be in a road, so I can't, I can't even go there. It has to be like here on a road. So that's the problem with that. I would love to put him next to these guys, but I can't. Now, if I look at the strategic reserve, you can see with the strategic reserve, It has to be 5 hexes away from a German unit, friendly supply head, but within the core area. And that's it. It doesn't need to be anything else. So that means I can take just one of the armored units and I can, for example, put it here because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away, and I can guard Bastogne with from that guy. Now I can't do Saint Vith. I can't even do this one because they're too close. But I could guard Bastogne right now, which I don't know. I mean, is that what I want to do? I don't have an answer. The only other card, the other thing I have is these guys. So if I activated them, these bridges aren't destroyed, so I can retreat across the bridge and hold the victory point and sort of give up this ground that the Germans are just going to slaughter me at anyways. So that's another potential option. I don't dislike that option. In fact, I'm leaning more towards that one now, even though I was so excited about getting rid of their disruption markers. So I think I'm going to do that. Let's activate these guys. So it's just a primary card. I'm going to activate all units in the core. And I'm going to just put that in my primary discard pile. And we're going to just do some movement here. This guy is already in zone of control, so I can't move there, which I would like to do. He's in the forest, which I really like. So there's a part of me that wants to just leave him there because the forest gives him better protection than going across the river to here. Although being across the river is nice because then they can't attack across the river very easily. But you can see here, we're just going to get swamped from behind. But this guy, for sure, we're going to go 1, 2, and actually that was 2 movement points, and then 3. And you can see there we secured the 2 victory points town that they were on the verge of causing some problems with. I'm going to leave this guy here because he's actually next to another unit right now. And then this one, I don't like his location, so I'm just going to go straight across the river and into the woods. So he's got the river on this side, and then he's got forest on the other. So it'll be really hard for them to take him out. Now, I could have activated the 2nd or the 99th, which are these units up here. But the one nice thing about maybe doing that is I could have built improvement markers for them. And by activating this guy and not moving him, I did create an improvement marker for him. So that's another positive to doing that action. And that's our turn. Okay, so we've already taken a turn, and how much of this is unfamiliar from the German solo game? Hardly any of it. In fact, it's very familiar. But now, when the Germans take their turn, this is where we're going to encounter all the new rules, and it's going to really bog down. So I'm just warning you, it's going to bog down a lot. So let's just do it. I have 3 cards in my hand, so I'm going to draw from our draw pile, and I got this one. Oh man. Okay, this part I know, and I know quite well. We're going to draw 2 cards for them, and you can see they both have the same command level. So now I got to figure out what to do. The next thing that says is the lowest number. So that 47 is going to go on the left, and the 71 goes on the right. Sorry about that. Okay. So let's take it slow, but I can tell you from what I remember from the rules, we checked this guy for an event, and you're going to see consolidation. And I'm pretty sure that that's going to trigger first before we do anything else. We're going to do their consolidation event, whatever that means. But let's take it slow. All right, here we go. Command phase for the Germans. Okay. They're drawing 2 cards. If Army Group B is drawn or discard for any reason, then we got to do something. This is going to cause all the reserves and stuff to come out. Okay. December 20th, we would do German fuel shortages. December 17th, if one of the cards is the Piper or the 150th, it becomes the command no matter what. So that's a special rule. Else place the card marked primary, which isn't going to happen. If neither are primary, higher command value, and if tied, the lower card ID number. So I did it perfectly. It's as if I read the rules before I played. I do want to quantify. I have read the rules, but when I started getting into the combat for the Germans, I did start to skip pages. And I'm going to be honest, I was like, you know what, I need to just dive in and play, just like last time. But I'm promising I'm going to go slow, because I've experienced this game already, and I know the dangers of just winging it. Okay, so, yes, number 1. If the support card shows a command event, immediately implement the event. So, I was correct. We are going to get consolidation. It looks like it's a regular event, but let's make sure. Consolidation is a regular event. Add 1 replacement step to the German formation on the command card for this impulse, not the formation on the supporting card. Okay. Assign according to replacement step procedure. If the formation is activated, this impulse, the unit may act. Okay. So basically they're going to heal, which I think that's a pretty cool command. All right, but the thing that they're going to heal is this purple core. And it's only going to be the 26th VG division or the Führer-Beglet division, which only has 1 token. So, excuse me. The Führer-Beglet is not in the game yet. The VG, these are the lair. And then the 26 VG is this guy, and that guy. There's no damage on any of them. So the command, this is an interesting test already. Conduct the first command listed on the command card that applies. So we got to look at the reserve rules. I'm thinking that we can't do the command because nobody's damaged. So therefore, the card is going to remain as a support card. So I'm going to say that the command does not activate since there was no damaged units to heal. So we're going to leave the card here, and we're not going to activate the command. And if I'm wrong on that, I apologize. But I'm pretty sure you have to be able to execute the command, and executing a command that does nothing is silly. So if a card remains in the support card box, move it to the command card box, connect another GE command. Okay, so now we're going to conduct the first command and go there. So the first command is this guy. So the first thing they want to do is activate the 26 VG and FBB. Okay, so now the question becomes, can they activate all that other stuff? So that's where the player aid comes in. And this is a German activation sequence, which is really good. I find this to be extremely helpful, but let's see if they have it here as well. They do right there. The activation does change whether it's an army card or an army group, so be mindful that that is very different than the German solo game. If you draw an army card or an army group card, they have some really wonky rules. They all make sense, mind you. They're it sort of simulates the camp group type of concept, and the Germans are going to do that. Except they have there's a big priority list of where it's going to be, and so you got to check off a bunch of boxes. So we'll have to do that when we get to that point. So if there's no active units on the map, but there's active units in the reserve box, place the units. Well, that's not going to be the case here. Okay, so step 1, remove roadblock and bridge ownership. So if there's any roadblocks that are next to the active units, or take control of the bridge, well, that's not happening. Now we have to check the objective marker. And if the objective is not on the map, we have to use the player aid. So okay, so we're activating the purple core. And that would be, oh, where are you? So not all the cores have their own objectives, I guess. Interesting. So here's what I'm looking at here. These are objectives for the 6th, 7th, and then 5th Panzer Army. And then there's objective for these 3 corps, but there's no objective for any of the other corps. So that's interesting. I didn't realize that. But we're doing the 5th Panzer Army, okay? So we're going to roll the die. And you can see I rolled an 8. So with an 8, the 5th Panzer Army is going after Bastogne, okay? So we as the Allied players get to know this. And it says Bastogne North. See that little direction? Because the 5th Panzer Army has 2 different tokens. And then this is west and south, and this is north, okay? So the north one is the one that comes out. And we put it there like that to show that that's his objective. Okay, so why the north versus south and stuff like that? It comes into play sometimes with the direction the brigade wants to go or the camp group. There's a lot of places where you have to actually check this direction, and that might be the direction that a unit will move. As part of those 14 different movement options, the fact that this says north, I think is going to dictate, where it's going to want to go next. So for example, if I'm looking at Bastogne here, it's going to go to Marche, St. Hubert, and Rochefort as the next. So let's just, out of curiosity, see where those 3 are. There's St. Hubert, there's Rochefort, and there's Marche. So, I don't know, I guess those are generally north, but they're not going for Arlon, if that's the case. I don't know. I'm not trying to explain it, because I don't necessarily know. But I know that it's important that you get the direction right. And I know for a fact from the rules, before I started glazing and skipping, that there's times when you have to check that direction. Okay, enough of that. So we placed their objective. So it says, if a German unit is proximate to or within 2 hexes of the objective marker, or that objective marker is not yet on the map, consult and roll. Okay, so if we ever get within 2 hexes of Bastogne, or the Germans do, then this actually is going to move to another location. It doesn't wait for them to actually get there. It's going to, as long as they're within 2 hexes of here, it'll actually move to the second location, and then eventually the third, etc. All right, so you could see that was number 2. Number 3, we move active unmapped units using procedure B. And then you can see we place detachments in turn 17. And then here, 18 and 21, gets to put reserve units on the detachments. Then we conduct attacks. Then we check that for units that did not move or attack. And to see if they're going to be removed to the reserve units box. If remove if it's adjacent to an allied unit and can trace reserve supply, and removal would have at least 2 German steps in hex. Would leave at least 2. Then they get to remove dispersal markers at the end, and they place IP markers, but only after turn 20. So you can see that there's some things that are going to trigger now, there's some things that are going to trigger later. Those are all things that and you can see here that the Army objective is explaining things. Then there's a core objective, and it even explains here that for these 3 core, it goes into the hex shown on the back. So now these core objectives are interesting. What those are, let me just grab one. This is like the red core up north. It's going to go on 0506. I don't know what the harm is of putting it down now, but I'm supposed to wait until the red core activates before I put this down. I don't understand it. Like, it's going to go down no matter what, so why can't I just do it as part of game setup? I don't have an answer to that. However, what I can tell you is that this objective it's pretty unique. These core units don't care about the Army objective until every hex within 2 spaces of this objective is clear. So if all the allied units are clear from this spot, within 2 hexes of this spot, then and only then will they turn their attention and start doing the Army objective. So even though they're a part of the 6th Army, they don't care about the 6th Army objective until this minor objective is complete. So the red units are going to stick around and basically clear out the whole area. And that's true for all 3 of these, which makes sense because there are weaker ones. They're the guys that aren't going to be out, taking the area by storm. Okay, so movement. All active non-dispersed units may move using the following. Okay, so we're going to start moving, and this is very helpful, but I want to tell you something. This is pretty awesome as well. I mean, the player aid is pretty good. I don't know if maybe this one has information the player aid doesn't. I mean, we'll have to test it and find out, but we're probably going to use the player aid the most. And so the movement is going to be different for supplied units with core objectives versus units with Army objectives. We just explained that. So here, this is movement 1, movement 2. And then outside of this, we're going to then go into these 9, 14 movement steps. So here you can see they're going to move towards an allied unit within 0-3 hexes of the core objective. This is if there's a core objective. The priorities are for allied target nearest to unit and then easternmost. And then hex that would surround the ally is where they want to go. Otherwise, they want to go to an unoccupied hex or the easternmost hex. Okay, so there's some priorities. I do like this. It's doing a very good job of explaining what needs to happen. So I'm looking at the player aid now to see what it would do. And you can see for units with core objective C9.23, so all it does is it punts. So actually this other thing is a little better. For methods 1 through 9, check all eligible units for one method before proceeding to the next. Then if, and only if, they can't move from 1 to 9, then they go to 10 to 13. So it's really interesting. So now if you have army objectives, that's where it's saying check units in ascending order or descending order is for each method. So 1 through 9, we check all units before proceeding to the next method. Then in ascending order for each unused methods 10 to 13. And 1 through 9 changes whether you're ascending or descending depending on the item. Okay, but then once you get to 10 to 13, you can see the little up arrow and the triangle there. So if you have a core objective, they're going to just do this here. That's going to be their Bible. If you have an army objective, then it's going to get into all this craziness. So our guys have army objectives. So just to remind you, we're doing the 26 VG division. And so it's this guy, and I'm going to put him on top. This guy. We're only activating 3 units. These other units aren't doing anything. They're just going to twiddle their thumbs. Okay? So we're going to start. The army objective, as you know, is in Bastogne. And I'm already bumping it a little bit, but that's fine. And we're going to go start at method 1, and then 2, and then 3, and we have to go in order until everybody's accomplished their movement. Okay, so the first one is special moves. Only if they're supplied. In ascending order, they're going to exit the map. Well, that's not happening, okay? If they're supplied and unsupplied, they're going to move adjacent to the muse. Not happening. C, enter an empty allied VP hex and stop. So it begins in a VP hex to which allied supply can be traced. We'll leave the hex only to enter a higher VP hex. So those are all considered special moves, by the way. Special moves is A, B, and C. So it's not doing A or B, but C might happen. So is there a VP hex that he can move to? And the answer is no. There really isn't. So we're going to move on. Are they going to move closer to the objective and adjacent to a VP hex? Well, the objective is a VP hex, but they're not going to be adjacent to the VP hex if they move. So as much as they would like to move closer to the objective, they are not going to satisfy the other part of the and statement. Can they cause surround? Now that might be true. In fact, this guy here can cause surround, and you can see if he moves 1, 2 like this, he has effectively surrounded this unit. So I'm going to remove this, showing that he's already activated and he's done with his turn. So we only have 2 left to do. Could they move to a hex that will open supply line if somebody was cut off from supply? I don't think anybody's cut off from supply at this point. This road is in supply of the Germans, and it's pretty easy to get supply there. Okay, so this would be, by the way, if you move a unit next to another unit that's going to possibly be out of supply, by moving next to them, you just gave them a pathway so they can get supply. That's what this is. Okay, so now movement methods 5 through 9. These only apply to infantry that's non-mechanized, okay? The mechanized don't get to do these until turn 23. Now I can tell you both of these are non-mechanized, so we don't have to worry. Move adjacent to an allied VP hex. Well, that's similar to what we already had. Can't do it. Enter an empty town. move to an empty Allied town or to an empty German town to which Allied supply can be traced. Now, German towns do cancel Allied supply, which I'm a little confused by that. But, anyways, like this town right here does not, I mean, Allied supply can be traced to there. Can it? No, actually it can't right now. But I don't understand, like, why would they want to move here? It's already a German town. But here's the weird thing, that is within their range. So this stack, if you have to follow them in order, they're going to move to an empty town. Well, it's going to be in descending order. So this is 14. So he will move to the empty town. Now we get to 13, and this is town no longer empty. So he's not going to move there. So he is the only one left to activate. So we got to do something else with him. Okay, next one. Move adjacent to an Allied unit or town to which no non-bracketed German infantry unit is adjacent. So that means they're not going to move here because these other units are adjacent. If it's the only non-bracket German infantry unit adjacent to, it does not move, and its move is considered complete. I don't understand that at all. That's number 7. Let's see if it's a player aid. Move adjacent to Allied unit or town to which no non-bracketed German infantry unit is adjacent. Okay, so no non-bracketed German infantry unit is adjacent to that Allied unit or town. If already the only such unit adjacent to an Allied town or unit, it's going to stop because it's already next to somebody. Got it. So, for example, this guy has a bracketed and a non-bracketed next to him, so nothing's going to happen. Enter a town occupied only by German armor. Not happening. Move. Oh, that's on December 18th. It's going to move to a detachment marker. Okay, now we're on methods 10 through 13. Remaining active units not able to move via methods 1 through 9. Follow the movement arrows. Move, if able to expend the unit's full movement allowance in the direction indicated, follow the primary arrow in each hex if possible. If the primary would result in movement ending before all movement points are expended, or in a hex adjacent to an enemy unit, and a move into a hex via secondary would not result in such ending, use the secondary. Okay. Well, let's see what his primary is. He's going to go this way for 1, this way for 2, and this way for 3. So he is actually going to join his buddy right there. And that's it. We finally moved everybody. So now we have to do attack. And I'm confessing to you, I didn't read it very closely. So we're at an hour, so I'm going to stop. It's also late at night, so I may have to stop for the night. But I'm going to read up more on how attacks work. And so we just finished activating these guys, and we did their movement portion. But now we're going to determine whether or not they're going to conduct any combat. I'm highly doubtful they will, but although this unit is disrupted and he's surrounded, and all 3 units did go next to him and surrounded him, so this guy might have a combat coming up. So, in fact, if I were playing the Germans, I probably would do it. So 4, 7, 10. 10 to 2 is 5 to 1 odds. Yeah, so we'd have to figure out if the... You know what? I can't go to bed like this. We got to see how this is going to play out. All right, so... Attack. Check each active unit with a 2+ steps that has not been attacked and adjacent to allied unit that has not been the target of an attack. The unit being checked is the lead. A German unit may participate in only 1 complete attack. If all defending units of the attack are isolated, immediately conduct the attack. Else, ratio equals the German strength to Allied strength. So we just calculate that's 5 to 1. The lead unit and include the strengths of the following additional units. Active units adjacent to the target that have not attacked. Now remember, active units is only the cards that were active, the units that were activated by this card. So this armor here is not active, okay? So he's not considered part of the attack. Active reserve units that could legally be placed adjacent. Reserve supply must be traded. Well, there's no reserve unit, so let's not worry about that. If the support card has assault coordination, it does. Oh my gosh. The support card has assault coordination at the bottom. So all non-active German units adjacent to the defender. So now that Panzer is included. So then we got to do this thing called situational strength, which is different than strength. The ratio is used only to determine whether they're going to do the attack. So the German combat strength total, modified by any units attacking across the river, they're going to cut in half. So actually, yeah, they're not 5 to 1 because of the river. The Allies do their combat strength total. If they're defending in a city, they get double strength. This is not a city. They get +1 for forest. They are in a forest. -1 if they're clear, but then -1 if they're dispersed. So this +1 and -1 cancel each other out. Okay? So let's figure out what their strength is. So these are all cut in half. So this is 4, 7, 10. So this is really 5 strength. +4 is 9. 9 to 2 is 4 to 1 odds. And they only got the 9 because this guy joined in. If this guy didn't join in, that would not have worked. So if adjacent to more than one allied unit, calculate the ratio against each target. Highest ratio, VP hex, closest. Okay. A given allied unit may be the subject of only one attack check if greater than 4 to 1 or equal, conduct the attack. That's the situation. We were 4 to 1. And if it's greater than 1 to 1 or less than 4 to 1, you're going to roll a die and then modify it based on this. So now we're going to conduct the attack and continue checking units, but there's no other units to check. And then there's units that are actually going to get removed to the reserve, which is really bizarre, but send the unit to the reserve if all of the supplies, they didn't move or attack this activation, they didn't come from the reserve in this activation, adjacent to an allied unit, and the hex would still have 2+ steps after removal, and they can trace reserve supply. Remember, reserve supply is different than regular supply. And then nobody's going to build any improved positions. Nobody's going to remove disruption markers. So so far, I think we're conducting this turn rather splendidly. So the next thing that's going to happen is the combat sequence. And I know that the solo guide has it, but I really did like this player aid on the other version. So let's try it here. So the German attack, all your units in one adjacent hex, period. Draw 1 German card unless overwhelming attack. Apply the card's combat tactic, if any. Check the supporting card, if any. Apply that card's combat tactic if different and beneficial to the attack. Well, the supporting card is already played because they're doing assault coordination. So that's going to the discard pile. Then we just got combat engineers as well for the Germans. So they now have 2 things. And let me make sure that combat engineers is not doing anything different. If they're the attacker, they add 1 to their combat strength. So that would actually make them become 5 to 1. Remove an IP marker from the defender, which is not going to happen. And we're not allowed to play engineers, which is something I was considering doing. Okay. Add active German reserves to the attack. So we'd have to check out 12.21 once we start getting German reserves. as of right now, we don't have any German reserves, so no worries. Play Allied combat tactics at our option. So that no command was going to be in engineers, but they played engineers. That cancels ours. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this one, screen, and that's going to reduce their chits by 2. So I think that's a good use of that card. Then we're going to draw combat chits. So, oh, actually, right here is a really nice description of how German reserves are going to get added. This, of course, is if we attack. They actually have an undetected German defender, just like the Allies did. So it's annoying. We're going to draw combat chits. So there's a minimum draw, right? So for us, it's 1. So I got my chip here. Us is 1. And for them, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then one more because they have an elite is 5. Plus 1 for every combat tactic they played. They played 2, so they get 2 more. So far, this is identical to the German solo game. Plus 1 if they had an elite unit, then that's identical to the German solo. Plus 1 if they were 3 or 4 steps. There's nobody with 3 or 4 steps. Plus 1 if the defender's out of supply or isolated. Minus 2 if we played screen. So I just took away 2. So minimum of 1, maximum of 5. The Germans always draw the maximum number of chits for German attacks. Every combat tactic in a German attack adds plus 1 combat chit draw even if the tactic is identical. Got it. They always draw the maximum. We always draw the minimum, and then we decide. So that's just like the German solo. So remember, the Allies always draw the minimum last time, and then they would break off. So here, the Germans are all in all the time. That's very interesting. So it doesn't matter what the minimum is. They're going to draw 5. That's what they're going to do. And then we have a nice summary of what they are. And then it's got a beautiful, I mean, this player aid is wonderful. So, and it's very familiar from the last one. So let's draw 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so I need, bear with me 1 second, I'm going to just go grab an empty cup. Okay, they have combat engineers and assault coordination. So there's no artillery on either side. There's no artillery on either side. This is not a city, but it is a forest. So we do D-1. This is a forest, so we do D-1. And they do have greater than 4-to-1 odds, so they cancel one of the D-1s. And that's why, folks, I like staying in forests, because I know what it's like to attack these punks. And finally, some payback. They get to suffer the same way we did. So no damage on either side. So we don't need to do the steps and losses or any of this. Just out of curiosity, I do want to take a quick look. This is identical to the German game. If the defender's dispersed, the attacker ignores a hit. That's identical to the German game. If the Germans attack with assault coordination, they get to ignore a hit. That's not. Boy, I wish we had that. But that's new. Defending units may either retreat 1 hex to satisfy a hit, or 2 hexes and become dispersed to satisfy 2 hits. All other hits must be satisfied by step loss. So that's very similar. The attacker must be applied as a step loss. 2 additional hits may be satisfied by dispersing all other hits. And then the German attacker hit reduction. If all defending units are eliminated in a German attack and Allied hits remain unfulfilled, reduce the number of German attacker hits. Hold on. If all defending units are eliminated in a German attack and Allied hits remain unfulfilled, reduce the number of German attacker hits by the number. Okay. So let's say they did 5 hits to us and we only had 1 step. I think what that's saying is they would destroy us, right? Because we only had 1. Well, we had 1 step. We would retreat once because we're dispersed. We're not going to be able to retreat twice. And I do need to look that up. But I think if you're dispersed, it's going to be the same rules. So we would retreat once. That would cancel 1 hit. Then the second hit would kill us. And there'd be 3 hits left over that the Germans didn't get to apply. And what that's saying is if we hit the Germans 2 times, they get to cancel both those hits because they had 3 surplus hits that didn't get applied to us, so they get to cancel the hits on themselves. That makes sense. And then the German units, this is identical to the solo game. And that's if they're defending. Now, if they're attacking, this is different. And we'll go through it whenever it's there. And then, of course, for both Allied and German, this is how we apply step losses. Then there's retreat priorities, which reads almost identical, if not exactly identical to the German solo. The retreat direction. These rules are different because there are no retreat directions on this map. And then we get to do advance after combat. We get to do the 2 hex advance. The same Butterfield rule that's not in the rule books applies here. And then the German advance after combat uses the same similar type of table that we did. So I know I went through more detail than necessary for this combat. But first of all, we survived our first combat. Secondly, we just implemented the German impulse in its entirety. And I'm telling you folks, there's enough rules that are similar to the German solo game that you were able to see me competently get through this. Now, there's always going to be these gotchas, and the gotchas are in the rulebook. I've caught a few of them already. So I don't want to tell you this is going to be a cakewalk and that I'm not going to get any rules wrong, but I am telling you that I have a huge leg up after playing the German solo game, that a lot of these rules are clicking. And you're noticing I'm actually probably more efficient on this than I was in the German solo game. So anyways, I hope you found that to be a good first German impulse. It probably is wise of me to stop here because if I did miss something, somebody will get a chance to tell me. And just to give you a refresher, I have 3 cards in my hand. I played one as a combat tactic, so I don't have 4 cards right now. And it's my turn, and I'm going to get to play just one of these cards. And I really like a lot of my options here. I actually like activating these guys. I do like that option still. And even the 5th core here, I like them. Now, just so you know, we can't activate the same core twice. We have the same rules like the German solo. So this 18th core, for example, we're not allowed to activate them a second time. Okay, so I'm still torn on whether I would activate these guys, which effectively would do nothing except remove 2 disruption markers, or if I would actually deploy my 2 tanks, which are very powerful units. And I would like to get them deployed, and one of them for sure here on the victory point hex. And then the other one I think I would just put somewhere over here, just so he's in a general direction of Bastogne, so he can stop somebody. Now, since I know this is their objective, I could actually do the Allies alert thing and strategically put the armor here to make sure I have something here to slow down their objective. Because now that I know that's the objective, I may want to play the strategic card and just put 1 unit there and call it a day. Because this is still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away from a German. So I could place it here, but then I'm only able to place 1 reserve instead of 2. So that's the dilemma I have if I do the Allies alert. Or raise the alarm, I mean. The Allies alert prevents them from using the combat tactic that gives them a hit if it's December 16th. That's what that does. That cancels their ability to use that. It's an interesting one. I think if I were to activate these guys, I would do it to put improvement markers all across the landscape where they're at. That's the reason I would do it, is I would do it to give them improvement markers so they can maybe have a stout defense. The good news is with them playing all their primary cards, we're going to get a lot of these little dinky cards like this, where only certain units are going to activate. This is going to be the case for the rest of their deck, which is very thick, by the way. So they're going to take a lot of actions here, and I think we're going to run out of cards. I was hoping that maybe they wouldn't have so many to start, but they do. They have their whole deck. So I know I'm telling you I want to quit, and I said this like 6 times ago. I'm actually having a good time. I'm enjoying this. So deploy 1 unit from the reserve unit box. Deploy 1 unit normally or as a strategic. Well, actually, you know what? Sometimes they have strategic grid. Oh, look at it. Look. I'm such a dummy. Look here. See how that says 16S? Those are strategic reserves. I don't need to do a special event to deploy these as strategic reserves. So before I quit, we're going to play this card right here. Bing, bing, bing. And I'm going to deploy these as a strategic reserve here. Now I could. Here's the problem. This is 1, 2, 3. I can't do a strategic reserve there. I'd have to be like really far back. I actually like the idea of him being here to hold that VP. I actually like that one. So, but yeah, I get to have my cake and eat it too. Okay, so I'm done with my impulse. I'm now back up to my full hand size. And by the way, this is the rest of my cards for the day. That's all I have. So I may want to just hold on to these and not use them as combat tactics, although I may use that as a combat tactic because that's what it is. Anyways, that ends my impulse, and now it's going to be their turn. And sure enough, they're going to probably activate somebody way up north when I should have activated them. But I am nervous, and I want to get the 5th Panzer armies blocked a little. So thank you for watching. Stay awesome. I hope you're enjoying this still. Here we go. The rockets are fueled up. Let's do Allied solo game. I just finished my first 2 impulses. We just finished the first German impulse, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Stay awesome.